let's explore the answer to this question. What is lean and how can it help my school? Lean is a methodology around more efficient operations, and it has been used since the last century in manufacturing settings, but now increasingly it's being applied to organizations that provide services such as schools. So this video will explore the lean methodology and how it can help a school. So let's first ask the question, why bother? What is lean going to be able to do for me? Lean does offer a number of striking benefits, and it has produced these benefits in the manufacturing sector, such as reducing cost, reducing the time to complete tasks, increasing productivity, or allowing staff to focus on higher value tasks, and reducing the amount of time that they spend on routine tasks. And then in a school context, we're not necessarily talking about products that we produce, physical objects that then go into the hands of customers. We don't use that language, but we do use the language of being interested in happier families, happier students, more satisfied staff. So these are the promises of lean, and these promises have been fulfilled in the manufacturing sector and increasingly in the services sector. So let's explore the basis for this lean methodology. Now, to put some historical context in place, we go back to some time ago with this fellow, Sakichi Toyoda, and we notice that there's a D in his name. In Japan, he started a company called the Toyota Automatic Loom Works. So the loom being the equipment that makes cloth, and not only is a loom a rather complicated piece of machinery, but as you study a piece of cloth, you understand that it's woven out of many, many fibers. And if you were able to see that one of these fibers was broken or was knotted or had an imperfection, even in a small piece of cloth, you would very easily be able to tell where the defects or imperfections were in that product. So it became important for Mr. Toyota to not only build good looms because they needed to be delivered successfully to the customers, but in their customer's product, namely cloth, it was going to be very easy to identify imperfections. So he needed a system, a methodology to run his business effectively and efficiently so he could produce a consistently excellent product. So over time, there's a successor company to the Automatic Loom Works, namely Toyota Motor Company. You've probably heard of them. So they have become a leading automobile manufacturer, and they manufacture the Lexus brand and are well respected as a company that knows how to create a high quality product on a consistent basis at a reasonable cost. So over time, the Toyota Motor Company then, in the middle of the last century, distilled these principles of lean into something that they call the Toyota Production System. So these are lean principles that we are applying here, but Toyota refers to them as TPS, but as a collection we can just refer to them as the lean methodology. So let's look at some of these individually, and then we'll think about how they can apply to schools. So most of these have a Japanese word associated with them, and each of them embodies a particular concept around running an efficient, consistent, well-run business. And so let's step through some of these. So first of all, you may have heard this. This is entered into the English lexicon, the word Kaizen, continuous improvement. Are we always looking for ways to improve? So are we dissatisfied in a healthy way about our current operations such that we're looking for ways to optimize, improve, tweak, and refine? So there's some other concepts include going and seeing for yourself. So instead of just being detached, we don't want detached executives or leadership who do not know what's going on in the classroom or in the trenches, so to speak. So there's this idea of going and seeing for yourself. And where do they go? They go to the real place where the actual work is done. So clearly there are lots of opportunities for finding that place in a school setting. Then one of the other pillars is this Konyaku stone, a precise buffing tool. As it turns out, if there are any imperfections in a surface of metal, even a tiny little speck, when this becomes painted, then the paint will not lay over that speck well, and you'll have an imperfection in the surface of the automobile. So Toyota then has a precise buffing tool and will inspect every exterior surface of an automobile and will buff off any imperfections prior to that automobile going to the paint shop. So that saves a tremendous amount of work by being willing to achieve that level of precision with respect to their automobile's exterior. It saves a lot of work down the line, and they have a process in place involving this precise buffing tool. Now, again, as schools, we're not going to be using a precise buffing tool, but there are opportunities to apply each of these in some way conceptually to the way that our schools run. So Poka-yoke, mistake proofing, self-reflection, being introspective about how we're continuously improving. Andon is a signal where an employee on an assembly line can actually pull a cord and it stops everything until that problem is resolved. That sounds inefficient, but in the end, if that stops a problem immediately at the cost of a few moments, that is better than something continuing down the assembly line and then producing a defect later, which could cost far more to correct. So there's some thought that goes into each of these. So laying the groundwork, building consensus. There's a concept called Kanban, which is a signboard of what's next to do or what the current status is, providing some visibility and accountability. This concept of autonomation is interesting, where you're combining automation with human intelligence. So in a school setting, this might be using software, but then using software in a way that combines with the skills of an individual, and then it's that combination of the person using the right software in the right way that is something that's not completely automated, but it is sufficiently automated to provide the results that we want. Then these next three words, Mura, Muri, Muda, are quite important in the lean concept, especially Muda, which translates to waste. So a lot of what we think about in terms of lean or adopting the lean methodology is how do we wring waste out of the system? How do we remove wasted effort? So this word Muda is going to get a disproportionate amount of attention with respect to all of these other items. And then just in time refers to having what you need right when you need it and not before you need it, because that would require additional time or expense if you're getting things too soon. And indeed, lean manufacturing used to be referred to as just-in-time manufacturing, but this has now faded into being one part of this description rather than the entire methodology. And then there's also this concept of production leveling or smoothing. If you have very busy seasons and then very slow seasons, that's not as efficient as if you could just smooth out seasonality and have your processes running evenly, consistently from month to month. So here's some ideas related to the Toyota production system, but now we can begin to think about how we would relate these to a school setting. Now, I remember I said we would look at Muda more intensely. Let's do just that. Let's now drill down and begin to think about 8 different kinds of wastes. So within that Muda category, that further subdivides into 8 different ways that manufacturers, or I could say service businesses, waste time, effort, and energy. Let's look at these in turn. There are defects, errors that are caused. So this might not be an error related to manufacturing an automobile, but we have had errors in terms of instructions that we provide people, in terms of errors in our written documentation, errors in our communication. So there are ways as schools that we make errors, and these have consequences and have costs to improve or to repair the errors. So overproduction, this is really more of a manufacturing concept of producing more than we need. Likewise, transportation is moving things unnecessarily. So these are kind of related to manufacturing, but they do have a service industry counterpart, namely motion, having people walking, or I would say moving paper, moving documents, any effort that someone is taking unnecessarily, that is sort of related to this overproduction concept. So this is really more of a service concept, and this might be more of a manufacturing concept, but they're related. And then when we talk about extra production or extra processing, this also is related to service. So we have some of these that are more manufacturing related, like transportation overproduction, and some of these are more service related, but some of them I would say apply equally. Waiting, no one likes to wait for one step to be finished before they can begin. That wastes time in a manufacturing setting, but also in a school setting. If someone's having to wait for the output from someone else or wait for a decision to be made, then that can cause a waste of time and money. And then this one is interesting: non-utilized talent, underutilizing people's talent, skills, and knowledge. Do we have capabilities within our staff, even within our school community, maybe within our school families, where we're not utilizing that talent? So there's lots of implications here in terms of capturing the best ideas, capturing the best volunteers, capturing the best methods of improving from our staff. Do we have systems in place to actually utilize the talent effectively? If we're not, then that talent is being wasted. So here are 8 wastes that are all part of this concept of lean. And now, if we want to begin to combine these together into a school setting, we're aware that schools operate in a number of different areas. Here's a recap of 6 major functional areas that schools participate in: finance, facilities, programs, advancement, including admissions and marketing, governance, and staffing. So as schools work on all 6 of these areas, how can these 6 areas apply to the Toyota production system or these lean principles that we just investigated? Well, let's summarize these lean concepts into a few different groups. If we think about these first 3, about seeing what's going on, continuously improving, this requires measurement, right, to understand what's going on. Then this next group, about making sure that we're not making mistakes, making sure that we're doing the very best that we should. This conceptually deals with accountability. Then we have this signboard that tells what's going on, and we also have documentation related to how people and software and technology work together. So I think we could call these 2 documentation. And then finally, there's a lot of emphasis placed on this, is reducing waste. So let's call that efficiency. So now we have these 4 broad categories, and even there's an acronym here, MADE, M-A-D-E. So we could say that Mr. Toyota made an efficient company, but measurement, accountability, documentation, and efficiency. So now we've grouped these concepts into 4 larger buckets, and then on top of that, we can combine that with the 6 functional areas that we just saw. So if these are the 6 functional areas that a school participates in, and of course finance could include risk and other things, advancement is also admissions. So these are very broad categories, staffing and training. So these are broad categories, but of these broad functional categories, can we begin to think about how we would apply these lean concepts at a high level? Absolutely. So do we need to measure across all functional areas? Absolutely. Do we need to have accountable methods and systems across these areas? Yes, indeed. Do we need to document what we do in each of these areas? The answer again is yes. And efficiency, are there opportunities to become more efficient in each of these areas and reduce waste in each of these areas? Well, certainly there are quite specific ideas that we'll explore next as to how we can become more efficient in each of these areas, and what are some specific ideas for ways that we can systematize, reduce waste, increase measurement, increase accountability, reduce ambiguity. So all of these 6 areas can have multiple processes and methods for increasing efficiency, measurement, accountability, and documentation. So we've seen an overview of what lean is, and so I hope we've been able to see at a high level what is lean and how can it help my school. It's a collection of methodologies that, when we combine with the functional areas of a school, provides a rich and fertile environment for exploring how we can make our schools more efficient, which leads to happier students, happier families, greater retention, and ultimately the furtherance of our school's mission.